Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, welcome back to my video game review series. So those of you who have been following my channel recently will know that I've mostly been reviewing licensed games, and we're going to be taking a break from licensed games for a while to talk about some PS2 classics. Today we're going to be looking at Haunting Ground, released in 2005, developed by Capcom. So for those of you who don't already know, Haunting Ground is a third-person survival horror game similar in many ways to games such as Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark or Clock Tower, games of that ilk. It's a game that came out quite late in the PS2 cycle, and it's one that I played for the first time recently. The game begins with a young woman named Fiona waking up in a dog cage wearing nothing but a white sheet. Upon escaping the cage, she finds herself trapped inside a creepy, mysterious maze-like mansion with only a few inhabitants. In the beginning of the game you are given very little information about the game's plot, and the story of the game is slowly revealed to you as you progress. I really like this because it adds to the overall confusing and tense atmosphere of the game. As they say, mankind fears what it does not understand. It becomes clear early on that the inhabitants of the mansion are extremely hostile and dangerous. Fiona will have to run, hide and jostle her way through the game, avoiding her stalkers and trying to escape. A short way into the game you are introduced to Huey, a white German shepherd who you rescue from being tied up with barbed wire. Huey then becomes your companion and will follow you for the rest of the game.
Huey? So you're Huey? Well, hi, Huey.
This brings me to the most interesting part of the game by far, the dog mechanics. You can communicate with Huey entirely using the right analog stick, and throughout the game your relationship with him becomes pivotal. You can order Huey to sit, follow, and stay in one location, or perform certain tasks such as retrieve certain items that are out of reach and Fiona can't get to them, or enter into certain areas that Fiona can't access and clear a particular obstacle. Some of these are necessary to progress to the next stage of the game. Huey can also be used to attack or distract Fiona's stalkers, giving her time to escape. There are also sections of the game where you will come across various traps and hazards, and Huey can be used to show you the right path to progress to the next areas. Throughout the game, you will come to rely on Huey a great deal, and it's important to keep him well fed and happy. Do not neglect Huey if you want him to like you. This is where the game's AI really shines. Depending on how you treat Huey, his usefulness and competence will change. In order to ensure that you maintain a good relationship with Huey, you must be sure to praise him when he follows your instructions by petting him and telling him he's a good boy, as well as feeding him tasty snacks such as beef jerky and chicken jerky. This will keep him satisfied and will help to maintain his stamina. You can also scold Huey for refusing to follow your instructions, and this helps to keep him in line. In all seriousness, I absolutely love the way that your safety and success in the game relies mostly on how well you treat your dog. This also can affect the game's ending, as like with most of these classic horror games, you can end up with a different ending depending on your actions throughout the game. More on that later. As far as the overall gameplay goes, you spend most of the game sneaking around the mansion, hunting for clues and items to help you progress into the next area and escape, all the while avoiding the terrifying stalkers. Each of the game's stalkers are very different in terms of their visual aesthetic, sound design, and even their AI is different. For example, the first stalker you have to contend with is a giant, mentally unstable guy called Debilitus. He has the strength of a fully grown man but the mind of a child, making him extremely dangerous and unpredictable. However, he is quite slow and easy to avoid compared to the others. Or Daniela, an extremely deranged, seemingly sociopathic maid who seems to have a sick jealousy of Fiona. As you sneak through the mansion, these stalkers will appear seemingly at random and you will have to run, hide and attempt to give them the slip. You do this by getting as far away from them as possible and trying to outwit them. You also have numerous designated hiding places in the game, such as underneath furniture or behind curtains or even hiding in bushes. You can also hide in closets and crouch behind doors. Sometimes these hiding places work, but not always. Adding to the realism, the stalkers will actually outwit you at times and will check in your hiding places. Sometimes they even pretend to leave, giving you the impression that you have given them the slip, only to come right back once you reveal yourself. This makes the game absolutely terrifying and intense, making it one of the most genuinely scary games I have ever played. This is amped up by the music that plays unique to each of the stalkers. The closer they are to you, and the more persistent they are, the louder and more intense the music will be. I found myself pausing the game quite a lot when I would enter a new area, and be confronted with a stalker just waiting for me, and like I said before, make sure that you treat Huey good, because he can be absolutely vital in regards to escaping from these stalkers. Seriously, a stalker could be on the verge of killing you, and Huey could save you right at the last moment, and he's such a loyal companion. I really love Huey. Adding to the overall realism of the game, Fiona has realistic statistics that will depend on how you play the game. By running and performing certain actions, Fiona's stamina will deplete, and this will make her slower and less effective. You can restore stamina by simply calming down and taking a breather, or using particular items. Throughout the game you can find and collect medicinal items, such as chamomile and lavender, as well as many others, which can be found and used to restore some of Fiona's attributes. You can also drink water from various sinks that restores her statistics completely. As I mentioned before, Huey also has these statistics, and these can be maintained and looked after by feeding him jerky and petting him. The game also has a panic statistic. If Fiona gets scared, she will start to panic. If she panics too much, she can have a full-on panic attack. This is extremely frustrating because Fiona's controls basically start spazzing out, and you can barely do anything. She will stumble around and fall all over the place, running headfirst straight into walls and being unable to perform any tasks or use any items. They did their best to make it resemble a real-life panic attack, and it's actually scary how realistic these panic attacks are. As I mentioned before, you can restore stats using items, and it's important to ensure that Fiona keeps her cool and maintains her composure. The game also has some basic combat mechanics. You can kick weaker enemies to defeat them, as well as doing minor damage to the stalkers. However, this is very risky, and it also depletes Fiona's stamina and makes her more vulnerable. You also have several throwing weapons that can incapacitate stalkers for a short while, giving you a chance to escape. Make sure you ration these and be sure not to waste them. You can also forge several items yourself using a machine that you can find hidden in several safe areas through holes in various walls. You get a short mini-game to forge them. Sometimes you can even forge special items such as clothing upgrades. Speaking of combat, you do get a few boss battles, if you could call them that. You basically get cornered and have to take a stand against each stalker one at a time and defeat them to escape. These are quite tense because you don't have much of an indication of what it is you need to do, and you have to figure it out yourself. Adding more tension to the game is the fixed camera, giving the game a classic horror game feel. Like I said before, the game is reminiscent of some horror classics, and it feels very old school in a good way. The game's graphics and presentation are absolutely fantastic for 2005, and the game looks great, particularly for a PS2 game. The environments and backgrounds look extremely well detailed, and there's a surprising amount of location variety. For example, you can explore the main part of the mansion, with old dusty rooms and libraries. You can also explore the grounds and even an underground section. You also spend a part of the game exploring the maze-like woods, and every single location in the game looks very different, and are all just as well designed and detailed as each other. There are several standout locations that look so much different from the rest of the game, and as for the character models, whoa, look at them! Fiona's character model looks absolutely incredible with extremely realistic and lifelike movements, and the same goes for Huey. Unsurprisingly, the developers used motion capture for Huey's animations, using real-life dogs, and it really shows. His AI and animations are some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. As for the Stalkers, they have some extremely creepy and unsettling designs, and there is some seriously disturbing imagery. The game looks absolutely incredible, and I have no criticisms for the graphics and presentation at all. The game also has a beautiful soundtrack that greatly captures the overall atmosphere of the game, and suits the game perfectly in my personal opinion. I also like how each time you reach a new act of the game, Fiona seems to genuinely grow in confidence, and she starts to really progress as a character. You have several cutscenes as well as flashbacks that reveal the story to you, and the story is somewhat enigmatic and very interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the game has several different endings. These depend on your choices and behaviour throughout the game, and of course I'm not going to spoil them. Suffice it to say, treat Huey good, or you may seriously regret it, but yeah, I digress. When you complete the game, you unlock several pretty cool bonus features. First of all, you unlock a hard mode with several in-game changes. You also unlock a secret bonus room that can be accessed from the game's menu. In this room you have a whole bunch of awesome features. For example, you unlock several new costumes for Fiona, as well as a new costume for Huey. Some of Fiona's costumes are, well, let's just say, kinda, sorta, provocative. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, costumes. A whole bunch of them. You also unlock a gallery where you can view several of the game's character models in sort of a museum format, along with those costumes. But yeah, these look great. You also get a whole bunch of concept art, as well as a movie viewer where you can view several of the game's cutscenes. You also get a jukebox where you can play all the music tracks from the game's official soundtrack. You also get a minigame where you can play as Huey. All of these features are greatly appreciated by me, and they certainly add some much needed replay value to the game in my opinion. The game also has some hidden secrets and some pretty funny Easter eggs. So all in all, the game is fantastic for the most part, and I would say it's one of the best survival horror games I've ever played. If I was to find some criticisms though, because the game, like any game, isn't perfect, I would say that some of the game's later stages are a bit of a chore to play. There are some very annoying difficulty spikes late on, and there's also a fair amount of backtracking, which was starting to get on my nerves a bit. There are several stages of the game where you may need to find a particular item to progress in the story, and there is often no indication whatsoever of this until you are far away, needing to do more backtracking to find said item. It's not a huge negative, but it's one of those issues with the game I could nitpick. Also, there are stages of the game where you can easily get lost, which I guess makes sense, since it adds to the horror of the game. But there's a fine line between that and just being frustrating. Overall though, the game is great, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody who enjoys a good classic survival horror game. I'd give this game a solid 9 out of 10, a fantastic survival horror game. Let me know what you guys think. Stay tuned for more retrospective video game reviews. Once again, I have a lot of reviews coming to the channel in the near future. Thanks for watching, and God bless.